It was just another Tuesday afternoon. The fluorescent lights in the Biogen lab hummed their familiar, dull song, and I was staring at the third-round trial data for luminol. It was supposed to be the breakthrough drug for early-onset memory loss, the one that would make our company, Aethel Biotech, billions of dollars. My hand was hovering over the keyboard, about to file the final compliance report when I saw the number. It was small, a decimal point out of place tucked away in the appendix of the supplementary analysis, but it was a number that changed everything. That tiny, almost invisible digit meant that 1 in every 45 patients in the long-term study was experiencing irreversible, life-altering liver failure, and I knew with a sick, cold certainty that Ethel's senior management was deliberately hiding it. My heart didn't just sink, it plummeted, taking my stomach with it. I should have just deleted the file. I should have pretended I never saw it. I was just a junior researcher, barely 3 years out of my master's program, and I had a mountain of student debt that this job was finally starting to clear. But the faces of the trial volunteers, the hopeful, elderly people I'd seen come through our clinic, flashed in my mind. The thought of their lives being destroyed, all for a stock price, felt like a physical assault. Hello, I'm Elara, and this is the story of how my silent moral dilemma turned into a public reckoning that took down one of the biggest pharmaceutical giants in the world. I know a lot of you are listening from all over the place, maybe sipping a cup of coffee or winding down for the day. Please take a moment to drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from.
It helps me feel less alone sharing these things. The lie wasn't just in the data, it was woven into the very fabric of the company culture. For months, there had been a growing tension around luminol. The internal reports kept getting flagged for unusual adverse events: dizziness, nausea, minor organ stress. But every time a red flag went up, Dr. Harrison, the project lead, would sweep it away with a condescending chuckle and a phrase like, "statistical noise, Elara." Focus on the success rate. I was naive enough to believe him at first. Science is messy, and human bodies are complex. But the deeper I dug into the raw, unadulterated patient files, the ones that didn't make it into the glossy presentation decks, the clearer the pattern became. The company wasn't just downplaying the side effects, they were actively misclassifying them.
What they called mild gastrointestinal distress was actually acute liver inflammation that required hospitalization. The fatal cases were being scrubbed from the main report and quietly attributed to pre-existing conditions. The night I found the final analysis, the one with the 1 in 45 liver failure rate, I couldn't sleep. My apartment suddenly felt too small, too quiet. The silence was deafening because I knew the truth was screaming. If luminol went to market next month as planned, potentially hundreds of thousands of people would be taking a poison disguised as a cure. My moral conviction had reached the point of unbearable pressure. The next few weeks were a descent into a silent, paranoia-fueled horror. I stopped laughing with my colleagues. Every meeting felt like a staged play, where I was the only one who knew the script was a tragedy.
I started taking my lunch breaks alone, not to eat but to meticulously copy the necessary files. I didn't take the flashy presentation slides, I took the messy, raw, verified data logs, the patient consent forms that detailed the adverse events, and the internal emails that explicitly discussed the need to mitigate the optics of the liver toxicity issue. It was damning evidence, amounting to over 23 gigabytes of pure corporate corruption. My hands trembled as I copied everything onto a cheap, encrypted hard drive I bought from a street vendor for $25. Every click of the mouse felt like thunder in the quiet office. I kept glancing at the door, certain Dr. Harrison would walk in and see the screen reflecting the truth of my betrayal. I knew I was risking my entire career, possibly jail time, for corporate espionage. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing I couldn't risk not doing it. I couldn't just drop the files in the mail. They would be intercepted, dismissed, or buried. If I was going to do this, I needed to go straight to the top. I needed the files to land on the desk of someone with the power to stop Ethel immediately. Someone who couldn't be bought off. I took the biggest gamble of my life. I went through public records and managed to find the direct private email address for Dr. Evelyn Reed, the director of the Food and Drug Administration's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. The director, the woman who could stop luminol with a single signature. I wrote an email that was short, professional, and terrifyingly honest.
I outlined the fraud, stated the 1 in 45 toxicity rate, and attached the encrypted key for the hard drive, which I mailed overnight to her private office, along with a cryptic letter. The whole operation cost me nearly $200 and every ounce of courage I possessed. Then I waited. I went back to work as if nothing happened. I sat in meetings and took notes on the projected sales figures for the drug that I knew was toxic. The tension was a physical ache behind my ribs. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Days turned into a week. A week bled into 10 days. Nothing happened. No FBI raid. No subpoena. No email response. I began to panic, thinking the package was lost, or worse, that she had simply forwarded my email to Ethel's legal team. I had risked everything for nothing. On the 11th day I walked into the lab early, feeling like a ghost.
I powered on my computer, and there it was, an internal memo stating that the luminol approval hearing had been postponed indefinitely due to a minor administrative discrepancy. My heart started hammering. It wasn't the arrest I expected, but it was a pause. She had seen it. I needed confirmation. Ethel's security was already tightening, and the tension in the office was palpable. People were whispering about a leak. I took another reckless step. I had included my private cell phone number only in the physical letter I sent to Director Reed. I checked my text messages. Nothing. I checked again, running a mental checklist of every mistake I could have made. Then, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. The text was just 3 words. It was the kind of message that felt mundane but carried the weight of a 1,000-pound hammer.
I read it, and a flood of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy washed over me. The text read, "I have it." 3 simple words. Not, "The data is compelling," or "We are opening an investigation." Just, "I have it." It was Dr. Reed confirming receipt, confirming that the files were secure, confirming that the most powerful woman in drug safety was now holding the truth in her hand. My truth. The aftershock was not a bang. It was a slow, agonizing implosion for Ethel Biotech. Over the next month, the FDA's private investigation began. They started with targeted inspections, subtle data requests, and quiet interviews. The air at Ethel grew toxic. Dr. Harrison began snapping at everyone, his face permanently gray. People were called into closed-door meetings and came out pale and silent. Then came the second shoe drop. The FDA didn't just reject luminol.
They issued a full-scale hazard warning on the initial trial results. The press picked up the story like wildfire. The headlines screamed about a billion-dollar drug pushed by fraud. The stock price, which had been flying high, began to plummet, losing over 60% in 24 hours. I watched it all from my small desk, an invisible witness to the destruction. No one suspected the quiet, overwhelmed junior researcher. I was just another face, terrified by the unfolding crisis, offering meek apologies to the senior staff about the administrative issues. The true climax came 2 weeks later. I was in the break room getting a cup of coffee when the office manager rushed past, sobbing. Dr. Harrison and 3 other senior executives were escorted out of the building by federal agents. The charge wasn't just corporate fraud, it was endangerment. The sheer moral and ethical corruption had finally surfaced. Ethel Biotech was ruined. The company that had promised to save memory was now remembered only for its deceit. They faced lawsuits from patients, massive fines, and a complete operational shutdown. I stayed long enough to collect my final paycheck. As I walked out, I didn't feel triumphant or heroic. I felt hollowed out but clean. I had lost my job, my career trajectory was now a gaping question mark, and I was deeply in debt. But I could sleep. That night, I received one final text from the same unknown number. It was longer this time. It simply read, "Justice served. Thank you for your courage. Your secret is safe." And that's when I realized the power of integrity. They thought they could silence me with fear and drown the truth with their billions. But all it took was one honest junior researcher, 23 gigabytes of data, and a 3-word text message from the right person to bring down an empire. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just working for a paycheck. I had fought for something real. I had fought for the truth. Some people break families, others rebuild them from the ashes. I chose to save lives. If you believe that the truth is always worth fighting for, no matter the cost, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of secrets, survival, and poetic justice.